How do you go from this to this in 5 simple steps? Number 5 is the real spice that allows us to make any chord sequence sound like any style or genre of music that you like. First, you need to know your key, and a great place to start for today's video is C major. This is also a great place to tell you to download the free PDF to follow along with the video. It visually lays out the 5 steps for you to fully understand this video, but also to help you when you come to create your own chord sequences. Before we put a chord sequence together, let's look at our options. In C major, we have these 7 chords. C, E, G, which is C major. D, F, A, which makes up D minor. E, G, B, which makes up E minor. F, A, C, which makes up F major. G, B, D, which makes up G major. A, C, E, which makes up A minor. And B, D, F, which makes up B diminished. These can be grouped into primary, secondary and diminished chords. The primary chords are C major, F major and G major. The secondary chords, which are all minor in a major key, are D minor, E minor and A minor. And then the diminished chord, which is the only one, is the 7th chord in a major key, and in this case it's B diminished. It's worth taking a note here that the dominant chord in a major key, which is the 5th chord, 2, 3, 4, 5, is really important in helping us lead back to the first chord of the chord sequence. You can hear that's our home chord, C major, and if I play G, it pushes us back to chord 1. Now we've looked at those, that leads us nicely into our first step of creating our first chord sequence. Step 1. How to write a chord sequence using primary chords only. If this is your first composition, start with chord 1 at the start and end on chord 5. This allows your chord sequence to loop nicely, as we'll hear in a second with our own. Even though you can create awesome chord sequences using only primary chords, we'll show you how to spice these up later in the video. Now let's create this chord sequence using primary chords of C major, F major and C major. So you can see there we've used C, C major, F major, F A C, C major, G major, and our second 4 chords go F major down to C major, F major up to G major, and I've made use of the chord 5, which is the G, B, D at the end, chord 1 at the start. Now we have a chord sequence, but if you want to make yours individual and eventually fit any style and genre, you'll need to add in the next 4 steps. Let's spice it up with step 2. Step 2, adding secondary chords. As we mentioned in step 1, secondary chords are where you can find more interest. They can help you show a wider range of emotion in your compositions. Secondary chords can also be used to replace primary chords. Chord 1, which in this case is C, E, G, can be replaced with A, C, E. So chord 1, here's A, C, E, which is A minor, chord 6. They share similar notes, so that's chord 1 and there's chord 6. They have the C and the E in common. Chord 4 can be replaced with chord 2. you can see there the F and the A are common notes. So that F major can be replaced with D minor. They have those common F and A notes in between. There are also less directly linked replacements that you will find when experimenting with your own chord sequences. I'm going to replace this C chord with A minor, by just moving it up and then checking that it's A, C and E. And I'm going to replace this F chord here with D minor, which is D, F and A. Let's have a listen to this chord sequence with the secondary chords in there now. Now that's sounding more promising, but with 3 steps to go, we know how much better and unique we can make this. If you're enjoying this, to help other musicians find this and create their own music, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. Step 3. Chord voicings. Voicing a chord means thinking about how the notes within the chord are placed within the music. The chord doesn't need to be in root position. For example, C being the lowest note in a C, E, G chord and the C being on the bottom. And that's how we've placed every chord at the moment, with the root note at the bottom of the chord. For example, in C, you could have the G as the lowest note. So I can move this C and this E up here, and the quality of the sound of the chord changes. Which you can hear is different to that. Let's edit a few of these chords to make sure that each chord runs smoothly into the next. Because these notes move quite far away, I think I might have, I'll keep the C the same between these, so we've now got C, F and A rather than F being on the bottom. So I'm just trying to make these run nice and smoothly between one another. Okay, let's see how that sounds now. You can see that the smaller movements between the chords means that if a pianist was really playing this, or your ear actually just prefers hearing these notes link closely, but knowing that it's an option is something that can help you going forward when you write your own music. You don't always have to follow this rule, and you'll find in most composition ideas that rules are fantastic to know, but certainly there to be broken. Okay, that's got some nice sounds and rich tones to it. Let's look at the next step. There are some clever ways that we can make each note feel stronger that we'll reveal after the final step. But in the next step we'll look at how the feel and style and individual nature of a composer's ideas can come into play. Step 4. Harmonic rate. Harmonic rate is the speed at which the chords change. But what does that sound like in our chord sequence? Let's create a pattern where this chord becomes shorter and this chord becomes longer. And then we'll keep that pattern up because the ear likes to hear some repeated patterns rather than it changing too much too often. So we've got long then short, long then short, and then at the end I'm just going to keep these as they were, just to kind of round off the sequence. So let's have a listen to that now. I'm going to put this click on as well so we can hear it linked to the pulse of the music. This step is key to us creating original ideas, but the next step is where the real magic happens. Step 5. Add rhythms. Your imagination can run wild here. Notes and chords can be combined in an unlimited number of ways. We're going to stick to broken chords, which is where we break the chord up, so it's clear that you can see the progression of the chord sequence that was already there. As I delete and move around some of the notes, it's important to understand that the amount of time, for example, these beats here, in each chord, stays the same. So this amount of time will still be based on C, E and G. Let's look at how we can break these and add rhythms in. So I'm going to shorten each note to last for just 2 within this grid. So I've got that C, E, G pattern, and then I'm going to repeat that as well. So I've copied it, and I'm going to paste it there. And then the chord changes. So let's speed through this a little bit. And then we'll come back and have a listen. Okay, so I've listened to that with a broken chord pattern. And now we can start to sense how this would sound if I just elongate each of those a little bit so you get a sense of more flowing sounds. Now that is much more interesting, but let's put the special sauce on it and make it sing. In this extra step, I'm going to add a bass note from each of the, so I'm going to add an extra instrument in actually. See how some of these sound. Okay. Make sure I match these up. So C, F, A minor, G. Adding the bass note in means that when you change the order of the notes round, it won't really affect the composition as much. I'm just giving you an idea of how a different style would sound here. F, C, D, G. Okay, and now we get this. I'm just going to change the sound of this as well. Let's find something that we like the sound of. Okay. And that's how you can take your composition from some simple ideas to something more developed. And this can fit into so many different styles and genres. Thank you for listening. If you're ready to take the next step and start to write a melody over a chord sequence you've made, if you're ready to take the next step and write a melody over a chord sequence you've created, watch our next video above.